Welcome to the New to Crypto podcast, designed to guide you through the crypto landscape with pinpoint accuracy, created for the new and intermediate crypto investor. Join your host, Crypto Travels Michael, as he takes you through the different facets of getting started and succeeding in your crypto journey. New to Crypto podcast brings you new episodes daily, Monday through Friday, with surprise bonus episodes sometimes on the weekend. Let me ask you, are you new to crypto? Don't know where to start? Are you more experienced but have questions? Then you're in the right place. This podcast is designed for you. Coming at you from the Trading Center in the Lifestyle Design Studio, here's your host, Crypto Travels Michael.
Hey, welcome to today's podcast. Today I'm joined by two amazing guests from VSA Partners, which is actually a hybrid brand strategy and design agency, which has offices in New York, San Francisco, and Chicago. VSA Partners has worked with brands such as Google, Nike, IBM, Pepsi, and more. And on the show today, I am joined by Ariadna Navarro, who's the Chief Strategy Officer, and Sarah Lent, who's the Chief Marketing Officer. Be sure to check out our blog page today about today's episode, which has all of the detailed information about Adi and Sarah, as well as VSA Partners, including their links. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guests, Adi and Sarah. Welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. We're excited to be here and ready to jump in.
Awesome. Hey, before we do jump in, can you tell our listeners, just share a little bit about yourselves?
Sure. I'll go first, Sarah, if that's okay, and then you can jump in. I'm Ariadna Navarro. As Michael said, I'm the Chief Strategy Officer here at VSA. My background is actually in innovation and business strategy and experience design. So I've spent most of my career helping all kinds of clients figure out the future and where the world is going so that they can then build very resilient brands and resilient business strategies and make the right choices moving forward. So crypto and blockchain and the metaverse and Web3, and obviously this conversation is at the tip of everyone's tongue and sort of trying to figure out what is the future of creating these new brand communities. So it's all very pertinent conversation and excited to have this chat.
Great. Hi, I'm Sarah Lent. I'm the CMO of VSA Partners. My background is similar to Ari's. I've spent about 20 years in our industry working across brand strategy, design, digital innovation, advertising, and media. I grew up in the Silicon Valley, so I've just had, a lifetime of experience and, looking at how emerging technology transforms the way that, consumers behave and businesses behave and how brands can tap into those technologies to build deeper connections with their audiences. And so, looking at, Web3 and blockchain and crypto and how that is transforming this landscape yet again is an incredibly exciting time for us at VSA Partners, but also for our clients and helping them to understand this new landscape and what are the appropriate steps to take today to make sure that we're future-proofing their business for tomorrow.
Fantastic. Those were some awesome intros, and wow, talk about extensive experience that you both have. That segues me into VSA Partners. Can you share like an overview about VSA and who your company helps?
Sure, absolutely. So VSA Partners has been in business for 40 years now. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary in November, has transformed, throughout those 40 years to meet the emerging needs of modern marketers. But today we've organized ourselves, as you introduced us, as like this hybrid brand strategy, design, and communications agency. And the reason that we've done that is because we want to make sure that we have a really robust consulting practice led by Ari to ensure that team can go deep inside of our clients' businesses, understand how it operates, and to ensure that every solution that we build through the creative components and disciplines across our organization is rooted in solving a business problem or helping them to capture an opportunity of growth. And so the clients that we work with are typically clients that are in an inflection point. Those clients that either, have lost their way a bit and need to reinvigorate their organization and solve an issue that they're trying to address, or clients that are budding and emerging and looking to skyrocket. And so, we can work across the spectrum of clients, both large and small, and also, across every industry. So it's been, a robust history of business strategy, design thinking, and world-class storytelling that's really propelled VSA to the organization that we are today.
Fantastic. Wow. Thanks for sharing that with our listeners. My first question in the deep dive is for Adi. And Adi, so much of power of crypto lies with some say fanatic communities. And I wanted to ask you, how do you look at community building for brands? That would be the first part of the question. Second part would be what can other brands learn about crypto and how it engages specifically with communities? Because a lot of crypto communities are tight knit, and there's a lot of loyalty amongst certain projects and things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I love this question because when I got into crypto, it was first on a personal level, and a friend of mine, Sarah's laughing because she knows I went deep and into a rabbit hole really, really fast. And it was so intense that by the time I came out of it, I was almost in shock at myself because of the speed by which I had gone down that rabbit hole, how fast I had to learn, because I think anyone getting into crypto knows that it's not easy to understand where to go and how to trade. And especially if you're not trading, sort of the bigger coins. And this is, obviously a while back now, I think no one's trading anything but some of those if they are. But if, at the time, if you were really getting into meme coins, you had to really educate yourself to understand. So by the time I came out, I was really sort of in shock at exactly what you just said, sort of this crazy community that had its own language, its own platforms, its own tools, its own way of talking, its own sort of business dynamics. How do you pump up the price, and what are the words you say, and eat the dip, and there's just so many crazy things about it that I started to look at it. I'm like, wow, this is not that dissimilar to how sort of a cult operates, or how a religion operates. And, when you break it down, you start to see it. You're like, okay, they have their own language. In many cases, they have leader, they have colors, they have platforms, they have, unique people that sort of adhere to that almost philosophy of each one. They have leaders within the community. They have whales. There are so many different layers that companies would pay us millions to build a brand system and a community that's that robust. So I don't know if this was done on purpose by the early crypto communities to create sort of all these elements that sort of naturally create adhesion, but they have them all. They have all these layers. So when you enter the world of a meme coin, or when you enter, if you're fanatical about a platform, or, I became fanatical about DEX tools. So that was the one for me, that's what worked. And they're really sort of thinking of all these points that you come in. And because you're investing so much time, because you kind of have to, the more time you invest in anything, the more you have an allegiance toward that. That's when, when people, I don't like sports, and I can say this now, and I own it, and I don't know anything about sports, and I look at sports, people who love them, and with awe, because I don't understand how you can be fanatical about a team, but it's the same premise, right? You can be fanatical about a sports team, even if they lose forever, but you just invested so much time. So that, I think the more time you invest, the harder it is to get out. So it's a lot of different reasons why I think it happens. But I think that eventually the question becomes, how can you do that in a way that's ethical and responsible, and allows people an off-ramp as well as an on-ramp?
Well said. Well said. I was just going to bring up sports. You brought that in. I just got out of a meeting. A friend owns a handful of soccer teams or football teams, depending on where in the world you're from. And we actually had that conversation. He was talking about how fanatic sports fans are. It's a community. And just like in crypto, it's a group of people or community or communities that are centered, they're like-minded and they're centered around, a certain topic. A lot of it's tech. Also, as you know, a lot of crypto projects involves a great deal of marketing and exposure. You have the dev or the developer side, and then you have the marketing side, and then of course you get into all these other things and vocabulary like utility and all that, but yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Sarah, I wanted to ask you, how are you approaching at VSA, like the metaverse for your client partners? And do you see like community building opportunities or, there as well, or?
Well, yes. I mean, I think that the metaverse as we can see it today is quite vague. We don't know how like this world and this next evolution of the interface is going to come to fruition yet. There are some pathways that we see being built, some that feel a bit dystopian, where we are fully disconnected and only living in a virtual world, and some that feel a little bit more optimistic, where the digital environments are going to start to interact within our physical world to create a better human experience. I am hopeful for the more utopian interface to come to fruition, because there is this massive convergence that's occurring right now with hardware, with and infrastructure coming together, with 5G, spatial anchors and wearables starting to really evolve and become the new norm. And then the kind of commercial infrastructure that is budding with blockchain and crypto and how value exchange can occur in this world. And so today, the way that we're talking about the metaverse and Web3 technology and how that will enable brand building experiences for our clients is very much in its infancy. Like, how can we take our clients into this world and responsibly explore opportunities for connection, opportunities for innovation, and opportunities for them to learn and ultimately become the future leaders of Web3 experiences. So what we're looking at right now for our clients is, how do you think about integrating an NFT kind of program into your marketing organization to utilize a portal or a function to build communities, to build brand loyalty, to create a shared value exchange with your audiences to ultimately drive business performance. And part of that exploration that we're doing is in partnership with Ripple and their $250 million Creators Fund that will help brands come in, and artists and creators alike, to, as you said, dip their toes into this new technology, explore how NFTs can be embedded in their business, but most importantly, how do we explore the utility that NFTs can have for business value?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to bring that up. The utility aspect, I would say, has become an important part of offering NFTs. And a lot of people that are newer to either metaverse or NFTs, or even crypto in general, are like, what exactly is utility? For example, I'm currently creating, it's going to be a crypto investors board game, kind of like Kiyosaki's Cash Flow meets Monopoly. And to purchase the game, the people will buy the NFT, and then the utility is receiving the physical board game will be sent to them. So it's just, other NFT projects have like utility portion is you get access to a private exclusive community, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. Adi, I wanted to ask you, what do you think crypto brands, crypto companies need to be careful about?
Oh, how much time do we have? No, I mean,
I will say there are some really good projects, and of course there are not.
Yes, I'm gonna hit this just from the human side, and a little bit from the brand side, and I'm gonna I'll talk about regulation and social conscience out of it, because that's I think it's a longer conversation. We did the brand positioning for I don't know if we could name them, but it's one of the top 3 trading platforms out there. And they're incredibly responsible and really take it seriously. But as we were doing this work in trying to understand business objectives and how do they grow and who are the crypto curious and who's going to come into that platform when and at what spending level, you start to realize that it's really young people. It's like, okay, so we want to do we want to go after the 18-year-old? And is that responsible, even if we're asking for someone to invest $50 and try it out for the first time? And how does that sort of start to look like? So you do have to ask yourself, how are you going to grow? Naturally, that sort of gambling, gamification aspect of crypto is going to be very appealing to very young people. I mean, I have my 14-year-old son obsessed about it, and I have to be, sort of sit down and say, okay, how do I encourage you? But also then responsibly, what do I need to teach you? So when you are building, whether you're a platform or you're even building a community, you really, I think, have to be very conscious about what value are you creating in addition to crypto. And then what responsibility do you have in that process? Because we all know it's very volatile. We all know it's a game of chance at best, at least right now. Not the utopian version, of course, of democratizing access to finance and financial assets, but it is today. So brands have a responsibility to create also human value in that process, and to really deeply understand what is the long-term impact of what is that, once we snatch that very young person, what is the impact we're going to have in their financial life for the rest of their life? I always kind of equate it with, if Steve Jobs had asked himself, what is the impact of iPhone when he launched it, and what's that going to do to alienating societies, and and people not talking ever again, and people, I think maybe they would have done things differently, or there's things that he would have put in place differently. So I kind of think about that as an analogous way of looking at it. So I think brands have to be thinking about that, and ultimately think it's a human at the other side. So what responsibility do they have as they're building these brands and communities?
Absolutely. No, I definitely agree that there's definitely responsibility in launching projects and, having anything involved, even the platform you'd mentioned in the investment space. Crypto and Bitcoin is a newer asset class. I would say in the industry, the people are hard at work on improving it. There's a lot of really good people, and there's a lot of prevention. It's a lot of people are mindful of prevention of rug pulls and things like that. In other words, to protect, investors long term, that kind of thing. Sarah, I wanted to ask you regarding. We touched on the metaverse. If brands don't know where to start, like to enter, the metaverse, either from branding, marketing perspective, or even to know about, it in general, what would you say are some first steps that they can take, and how can they proceed, to learn more and dig deeper into that world?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, we're kind of looking at it from two sides. I mentioned earlier in the conversation around how brands can dip their toes in through it by exploring an NFT program and how it can be embedded inside of their marketing engine as a community builder or an engine of driving revenue growth. But they can also start to look at it from the more experiential side. A lot of what the metaverse is going to be like is, kind of like the world of gaming, right? It's a breakdown of siloed media portals where there's going to be interoperability for users to be able to transform into one platform versus the other. So for instance, we all could be on Squadcast today, and we could be talking about the latest drop of Stranger Things on Netflix because it's spectacular and it's incredible content. But today we would have to hang up and then go into Netflix and get back on another platform to be able to talk about it and share in those experiences. Within the metaverse, we'll be able to explore, move from this platform into Netflix, understand, interact with content together, interact with characters, some of the products. They could have NFT experiences that would be a portal into accessing, more additional experiences more aligned to the utility that you're discussing. And so for brands to really understand how that interface is going to come to fruition and how people are going to start to interact within those more kind of cohesive, interactive environments, gaming is kind of a good place to start. Understand those users. Understand what they're looking for within those environments. Understand how they interact with each other. Understand what's valuable, what drives value, how they exchange that value, and build a cohesive engagement strategy for how your brand can show up in those communities and help elevate value rather than detract from it. Because if brands start to come into that space and try to advertise the way that we advertise today, they are quickly going to get shut out of those communities. You really have to understand that user base and what they are looking for and what's meaningful to them, and enable experiences that elevate that rather than detract from it.
Definitely. I agree. And the gaming and esports industry is huge. It's I had on the show some leaders from that before, and they were talking about one of the events that they had a greater amount of people just watching it than the Super Bowl. Like, so that just gives brands an idea of how much opportunity worldwide is in gaming and things to come in gaming. I wanted to ask both of you. Both of you have worked with, and your company as well, with brands like Google, Nike, IBM, Pepsi, and others. Who would you say is VSA Partners like targeted customer, and how could you help them? Because we have people that have brands that listen to the show, or chief marketing officers of different, even crypto brands and other tech brands. And so how can VSA Partners help them?
So, I think I had said at the start of the call, like, we work with, across every single industry and across clients of various different sizes. We've worked with IBM for 30 years, but we've also worked with a firm, helping them to break through and become an emergent dominant player within the fintech space. So it's everything and anything in between. But when we show up best, and when marketers get like the true value for us, is when marketers come to us and they have a very specific need that they are trying to solve, right? Whether they're trying to break through and become the next game-changing brand, or they're trying to maintain the dominance that they've had in the marketplace as competitors are nipping at their heels. That's where VSA Partners really shows up well, because we understand how businesses operate, and we bring creativity and design thinking to that to make it really human-centered and applicable, and create solutions that have impact but have longevity to them as well.
Okay. All right. I wanted to also ask you, what sorts of trends do you see in marketing these days, which either directly involve crypto and the blockchain industry, or maybe even indirectly?
Yeah, I'll jump in on this. I mean, there's a little bit of everything. I think there's sort of the side of branding that has worked really hard to humanize brands. We've moved from these big brands, whether it is a lot of the brands that we work with, these big legacy giant organizations, to a lot of, last decade, sort of a lot of startup movement. And they, a lot of these companies, because they were creating sort of new business model innovation, and a lot of whatever they were delivering was based on new technology, they really worked to create very simple brand systems. You have the Caspers of the world, even the Robin Hoods of the world. They were very simple brands with a very simple message, with very simple visual identities, that you could sort of get very quickly. And you've seen that, right? And it's like millennial pink, and they all show up, sort of very similarly. And I understand why, we sort of had this. Then we went into we got into sort of this all crazy tech world that has proliferated. And that tech world, specifically blockchain, and honestly, any company within the digital transformation world, who's just created this sea of sameness and jargon and selling by features rather than actually having a brand and a differentiated perspective and a position in the market that maybe even can connect at a more emotional level. So I think a lot of those tech companies, and I say tech because it is quite broad, it's honestly anyone from IoT all the way to Web3 and everything, and blockchain and everything in between, I think are struggling to differentiate it, and now realizing, holy crap, we never built the brand because we had the technology. Now we need to invest in brand, because I realize brand is why you choose something. 70, 80% of a choice you make actually happens at the sort of, not necessarily unconscious level or subconscious level, but sort of this almost irrational sort of belief. And it happens because you've had some contact and understanding and connection with a brand. So tech companies are realizing that they have to build up the brand, and that the differentiation comes at the brand level, not at the tech level. And then the big corporations are saying, okay, well, we have to humanize and simplify and come down to that level. So it's a fascinating, I think, at time in branding, and I think everyone's learning from historical sort of trends and kind of trying to figure out what's the brand what is the next evolution of brand.
Thanks for unpacking that. Adi, you touched on actually a trading platform earlier, and I wanted to ask you, it actually brings to the top of mind, do you see, is there an ethical mandate for crypto and trading platforms today, and how do you think that should be approached?
I mean, honestly, I think every company has an ethical mandate today. It's not just crypto. I mean, it makes sense that it's crypto because it's crypto, and that's obviously what we're here to talk about. But Sarah and I talk about all this all the time. In the past, you had institutions and organizations who were the beacons of society. You had government, you had religion, you had education, all these things, and they supported the world and your beliefs and created role models, and that's how societies functioned. A lot of those institutions have failed. And that responsibility for a long time now has fallen on brands and on companies. And now it's, a Pepsi who has to uphold the values of society, or Audi, or Levi's, whomever, or ABI InBev. It's the companies that have to now act ethically, that have to have ESG policies that basically save the world, that have to move social differences forward and injustice. It falls on everyone. So that's kind of point one. Then when you bring that down to crypto, then to me, it is more of maybe less of sort of this big global responsibility, and more of, okay, if you're creating a new financial system, or that's the ambition, that obviously it's decentralized, it's not attached to governments, that empowers, someone in a country with no bank access to sell their products, all the things that crypto promises. If that is the goal, someone has to create the moral fiber and the rules of engagement. As with any society, it cannot be the wild, wild west. So these trading platforms are a good sort of starting point because they are who they are, and they have volume and obviously the financial power and reach that maybe others don't. So I do think they have to come together and say, okay, it's not the wild, wild west. We have locked arms. Here's rules of engagement. Here's how we behave. Here's our tenets. And now let's go and innovate and grow.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I would say one of the things that people love about crypto is that it's global. It's permissionless and trustless. So I could send you crypto from my phone right now. There's no intermediary. People love that. It's very, depending on which blockchain and which token, it's very low cost to send it to you. And depending on which token is sent, you could have instant finality or have it in less than a minute. And in some developing countries, you touched on that as well, is it's a real benefit to have, it's almost like another payment system or payment alternative. Brands like Travala, for example, if I want to go take a trip, I can go to travala.com and I can book all my travel and pay with any one of dozens of different cryptocurrencies. So I would say that there's more adoption, even with brands accepting payment of crypto. Even my virtual private server, I can pay in crypto and that kind of thing. You can even buy precious metals these days in crypto and things like that. So, we saw years ago where Apple Pay, Google Pay, came in. I remember the days of PayPal in the very beginning. That was a foreign concept. You're going to what? Email me money? I don't understand. So, yeah.
No, that's so true.
Yeah. And then we have companies like Wise or TransferWise these days, and, all the other ones that have followed, and the global fintechs. And yeah, so I would say there's a lot of room for improvement. I would also say that there are leaders in the space that are working hard. And I would venture to say that they understand how important it is to have a trustable industry, if you will.
And the thing is, you have two sides and you touched on them both. And when we did our crypto project, we were trying to figure out what is the perception? Do people see crypto as a currency, or obviously do they see it as a trading asset? And I can't remember the stats, but I think right now it's something like 70% is trading and only 30% is used, as currency. So you have two dynamics that are two motivations that are very, 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 very different. So when you have one driving the perception, you have to figure out how to reconcile that, because if that's going to create the trust for the currency side, and that's the volatile side of it, and that's the more sort of PR worthy side, and that's what gets out there, and then Floki floods the world with that, that side influences the stable side and vice versa. So it's not, if you were looking at that as a brand system, it's not the most easy thing to figure out, especially if no one's in charge, because that's the nature of it. So I agree, there's a lot of people doing a really good job, and I just think it has to be clearer. And eventually you're going to need it like got milk, kind of version of campaign that really starts to create a mass understanding of it at a level that people can digest it.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Yeah, it's also blockchain is being taught in many of the top universities in the world. Actually, one of the founders of one of the most popular, crypto projects is an MIT professor. And so I would say there's, traditional business is overlapping with the tech side and even the tech industry, into, I guess it's fair to say, this new thing called crypto, relatively new asset class, Wanted to ask both of you, what are some things to come in 2022 and beyond with VSA Partners?
I mean, it's a great question. I think, you can expect to see us to always embed like very rigorous strategic thinking, design thinking, and creativity across all of our clients' businesses. But what I would be looking for from us is really, how do we shepherd really impactful brand building experiences as Web3 technology starts to evolve, as blockchain and crypto starts to become a bit more normalized, a bit more mainstream, and how can brands embed themselves to create value with those technologies and the communities that they're looking to connect with.
Okay, very good. Sarah, we touched earlier a little bit about like your company's involvement with Ripple and the Creator Fund. What part is VSA playing in what you and your group are doing there?
Absolutely. So, as I said, we, as, kind of marketing leaders and consultants for our clients, believe that it is our responsibility to stay ahead of the time, to future-proof our knowledge, to ensure that we future-proof our clients' businesses. And part of that process is looking for strategic partnerships that help fill in the gaps of our understanding, especially on the technical side. And one of those strategic partnerships that we've made is with Ripple, a leading crypto and blockchain company based in San Francisco. And they are, a highly responsible organization. They have invested in their technology in a very kind of meaningful and responsible way. They have carbon neutrality embedded across all of their principles in their organization, and they ensure that they do not innovate just for innovation's sake. They are doing it in a way that is responsible to society, I guess, in the ethical manner that we were discussing earlier on. And so those values very much align to our values at VSA Partners, but most importantly, the values of our clients. And so we embarked upon a strategic partnership with Ripple to enable that really robust technical understanding of crypto and blockchain and how, Web3 is going to transform the way that businesses operate, and marry that with our capability of truly understanding brand and marketing and our clients' businesses and what we can do together. And throughout that partnership, Ripple launched a $250 million creators fund that invites artists and creators and brands in to access that fund, so that it is the sole purpose for those companies to utilize the exploration of how NFTs can be embedded inside of their organizations, how they can be utilized as a marketing engine, and how it can derive utility for those companies. And so we, VSA Partners, are the premier creative partner for those brands to come to the fund, and we can help them as marketing leaders to imagine how to do so. And so I think we talked a lot about, NFTs, I think you mentioned, could be a portal that gives you access to a physical product. It can be a portal that can give you access to a certain experience that you are looking to achieve with a brand. But also it can be incredibly functional in its value. I think I've always made this joke, and I talk about it with Ari all the time, when the boring stuff really shows up, that's when it's going to be embedded for good, right? So there will be a future where an NFT is going to be located on the blockchain. That's going to be your home deed. And you, as an individual that actually really don't know where that is right now, and you will have that as a digital, smart contract that lives on the blockchain that will be accessible by you and anybody else that you are looking to share that with. There will be a future where your patient data, your personal patient data about you as an individual will live on the blockchain and will be accessible by NFT. There will be a transfer of power to the patient so that you could have the capability to distribute the data that you find relevant to the medical providers that you are working with. These fundamental shifts are coming, and we believe that our partnership with Ripple is really going to supercharge us as marketers to see that future, to see where the boring stuff is going to start to embed massive industry and behavior change of consumers. And then how do brands get ahead of that to make sure that they are at the forefront of that change rather than on their back heels?
Can I jump on something, Michael? Do you mind? Just
absolutely,
because I think it's an important point to make. If you're not very familiar with this topic, or even obviously marketers are a little bit, but they can't figure out how to get on, how to get on the highway or where to start. I think it is imperative for brands to test and learn, and to try and to literally spend the time and the mind share and the manpower to sit down and talk about, okay, what challenges do you have? Where can we add value? Hey, let's test a little something here. Okay, how can we build that? Okay, well, actually that didn't work. Let's do something else, because no one has the answers. If you ask me how to build a brand up until NFTs, I would have said, oh, you did it, in 2 seconds, I would tell you what to do. But if you tell me what is best in class example of how to use NFTs for this, that, or the other, I can give you an examples of brands that have done things, but I'm not 100% sure that's the right move either. So much of where we are in this innovation cycle is exploration. So rather than sort of be anxious and, close the door and be like, I don't even know where to start, so I'm not going to do anything about it, I think brands genuinely just have to have creative conversations. They have to do research. They have to understand how are people using some of these either communities or more utilitarian NFTs today, and then start to understand and play with it. It's technology, so it gives us the ability to kind of tweak and do different things. So I think the brands that will win in this space are brands that get in early and that are fearless about trying different things.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It came up earlier. We were talking about how fast things in blockchain and crypto, change and move, and tech as well, So it's an exciting time. I love tech and I love the blockchain and crypto industry, and it's just the changes and the fact that everything's global. There's so many people around the world that are involved, and it's an exciting time. What are some ways that our listeners can stay in the conversation and even reach out to you and your team?
Please go to VSAPartners.com. There is an email address there that you can email. My entire team gets every email that's sent through the website, including myself. If you have any interest in VSA Partners, if you have any interest in the Creators Fund, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Okay, fantastic. And we also have all the links as well on the episode blog post page, your website, and I believe your social medias and everything is there. Is there anything else that either one of you would like to share today as we start to wrap up our interview?
I just think I have, a comment on something that you said, that things move really fast, especially in technology. I find that it's like that pace is quickening every day. The change is just, every day something new is happening. And so just to double down on Ari's point, don't be afraid to try things. Don't be afraid if it's not 100% success, right? Part of moving into a new space where emerging technology is changing things is about trying things out. And the success metric is not necessarily how well it goes. It's about what you learn from it and how you apply it within your next iteration of, kind of brand building experiences. So that would be my final comment to the listeners is, take a risk, because it's worth it.
I love it. And I guess one last thing I'll add, and this is the strategist in me, but whatever you're building, even in this test and learn and, innovation process, try to create something meaningful. Try to really think of the user at the other end. And it's not just about making sure someone goes down that rabbit hole forever and never talk to a real human being again. It's not about engaging someone 24 hours a day, but what are you creating that's adding meaningful value? And that meaningful value, of course, can come in the form of entertainment and of fun and joyful virtual experiences, but really try to think about creating human value in the process so that you're not just creating more noise in the market.
Agreed. Well said. Yeah, it's important to create a really good product or project, whatever may be, in the process of being created. So it was a pleasure to have both of you on the show today, and we welcome you back in the future. We have Adi in New York and Sarah in the San Francisco Bay Area, so it was a pleasure to have you both here.
Thank you so much for having us. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. So thanks for coming out. And if you like today's episode, definitely like and subscribe to the podcast, show your support, and chime in here tomorrow for another special episode. Until then, make it a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to New to Crypto Podcast. If you like the episode, be sure to follow and subscribe. You can listen to every episode on all major platforms. Have an interest in being on the show or want advertising? Reach out at newtocrypto.io. Head over to our site, newtocrypto.io, to access the resources mentioned in each episode. Until next time, remember to navigate the crypto landscape with pinpoint accuracy.